The idea of nuclear winter is a chilling thought. The possibility of a prolonged period of global cooling and darkness caused by the aftermath of a nuclear war. It's not just about the explosions themselves, but the catastrophic changes they could bring to our planet. A nuclear war could result in massive fires and the release of huge amounts of soot and smoke into the atmosphere. This would block out the sun, drastically lowering temperatures around the world and creating a new harsh environment that would be nearly impossible for humans to survive in. This phenomenon, known as nuclear winter, is one of the most unsettling consequences of the destructive power of nuclear weapons. The fear of nuclear war is not new. During the Cold War, in the second half of the 20th century, the world was on edge as tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union escalated. The threat of nuclear annihilation loomed large. Although the Cold War ended peacefully, the potential for nuclear conflict remains, and with it, the threat of nuclear winter. If such a disaster were to occur today, the consequences could be far-reaching, not just for the countries directly involved, but for the entire planet. Nuclear winter could potentially bring about a global collapse that humanity might never recover from. The science behind nuclear winter is rooted in the devastating effects of nuclear explosions on the atmosphere. When nuclear bombs detonate, they generate intense heat and enormous firestorms. These fires send vast amounts of soot, smoke, and ash high into the atmosphere, where they can linger for months or even years. As these particles block sunlight from reaching the Earth's surface, they significantly reduce temperatures across the globe. This dramatic cooling could cause average temperatures to drop by several degrees Celsius, with some estimates suggesting a reduction of as much as 10 to 20 degrees Celsius in certain regions. The scale of this destruction would be immense. Cities and towns targeted by nuclear weapons would be destroyed in an instant, and the fires triggered by these explosions would create thick plumes of smoke that would spread over vast areas. These clouds would rise into the upper atmosphere, where they would remain suspended, blocking sunlight from reaching the Earth's surface. This phenomenon, known as global dimming, could plunge the planet into an unnatural winter, disrupting agriculture, ecosystems, and the basic conditions necessary for life. The combined effects of extreme cooling, reduced sunlight, and environmental destruction could potentially lead to a breakdown of civilization as we know it. The aftermath of a nuclear winter would bring profound and widespread devastation, particularly when it comes to agriculture. With sunlight blocked by smoke and soot in the atmosphere, the Earth's surface would cool significantly, leading to a dramatic reduction in temperatures. These conditions would make it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to grow crops in many regions of the world. The resulting crop failures could trigger widespread famine, threatening the survival of billions. Major agricultural areas, such as those in the United States, China, and India, would suffer the most, as their temperate climates would no longer support the growing conditions required to feed their populations. The consequences of radiation exposure would compound the already dire situation. Even in areas not directly hit by nuclear explosions, radiation from fallout would spread across the globe, contaminating water supplies, soil, and air. This would lead to long-term health problems, including increased rates of cancer, genetic mutations, and other radiation-induced illnesses. The collapse of healthcare systems and the breakdown of infrastructure would make it nearly impossible to effectively treat these health crises, exacerbating the suffering. Furthermore, ecosystems across the planet would suffer irreparable damage. Many species of wildlife would not be able to survive in the cold, dark, and polluted conditions brought on by nuclear winter. Ecosystems would collapse, leading to the loss of biodiversity and the disruption of essential ecological functions. The effects would cascade through the food chain, affecting everything from microscopic organisms to large mammals, and leaving entire ecosystems in a state of ruin. The planet's natural balance, which humans rely on for resources and survival, would be thrown into chaos, creating a perfect storm of environmental, agricultural, and human collapse. The threat of nuclear winter underscores the urgent need for global action, and one of the most crucial steps in preventing this disaster is nuclear disarmament. In the aftermath of decades of Cold War tensions, world leaders began to recognize the dangers posed by the vast nuclear arsenals held by various nations. Though there have been significant strides toward reducing nuclear stockpiles, much work remains to ensure that these weapons are never used. International cooperation is essential in this process, and ongoing diplomatic efforts must continue to address and reduce nuclear threats worldwide. Beyond disarmament, there is a critical role for diplomacy and conflict prevention. Preventing nuclear war means not only reducing arsenals, but also fostering diplomatic relationships between nations to avoid the conditions that could lead to a global conflict. Maintaining peace in a world that still possesses nuclear weapons is one of the greatest challenges of our time. Through diplomacy, dialogue, and multilateral agreements, nations can work together to prevent escalation and ensure that future generations do not have to face the nightmare of nuclear winter. It is also crucial to strengthen international institutions dedicated to peace and security, such as the United Nations, to promote stability and prevent war. Equally important is the role of public awareness and education in reducing the risk of nuclear disaster. As the effects of nuclear weapons and the potential for a nuclear winter become more widely known, public pressure can push governments toward policies that prioritize peace and disarmament. Awareness campaigns, educational initiatives, and media coverage can help inform people about the dire consequences of nuclear war, making it more likely that citizens will demand action from their leaders. By staying informed and active, we can ensure that the world takes the necessary steps to prevent the unimaginable consequences of nuclear conflict. The urgency of the nuclear winter threat cannot be overstated. As we've seen, even the possibility of such a global catastrophe remains a present danger. While the Cold War may be over, the risk of nuclear conflict has not disappeared. With tensions between major nuclear powers continuing to simmer, the possibility of a nuclear war and the subsequent onset of nuclear winter remains very real. The effects of even a limited nuclear conflict would ripple across the planet, potentially leading to decades of environmental, economic, and societal collapse. The time to act is now, before the worst-case scenario becomes a reality. It is our collective responsibility to take proactive measures to avoid the unimaginable consequences of nuclear war. Governments, international organizations, and civil society must work together to ensure that nuclear weapons never again threaten humanity's survival. This involves continued advocacy for arms control agreements, diplomatic engagement, and robust conflict prevention strategies. More than that, it requires a commitment to global peace and security that transcends political differences and prioritizes the well-being of future generations. In this critical moment, we must recognize that the fate of our planet rests on the decisions we make today. We are at a crossroads, and the actions we take now will determine whether humanity can continue to thrive or whether we will face the long-lasting repercussions of nuclear winter. The responsibility to advocate for peace, support nuclear disarmament, and ensure a safer future lies in our hands. We cannot afford to remain passive. The time to stand up for a world free of nuclear threats is now.